Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are attempting something pretty ambitious, I think. We're going to try and smash together two really big ancient systems.
Huge systems.
Right. Hindu goddess mythology on one side and Western spiritual alchemy on the other. And we want to see if we can find where they overlap, specifically looking at goddesses, like the fierce ones, as maybe representing stages of transformation.
Yeah, and focusing on the Dark Mother, Kali, the idea is to see how her whole deal, the intensity, the iconography, might actually map onto the early steps of the alchemical great work, the Magnum Opus.
It sounds like a stretch, maybe, putting these two together.
You'd think so, maybe.
Yeah.
But when you look at the sources, the symbolism lines up in ways that are, well, kind of startling, actually. We're talking about two paths, totally different origins, right? Different cultures, different time.
Millennia apart, miles apart.
Exactly. But they seem to share this fundamental understanding of what spiritual growth needs, what it demands. On one hand, you've got Kali, raw, maybe even shocking imagery, the devourer.
And on the other.
The meticulous, color-coded stages of alchemy, turning lead into gold, metaphorically speaking, and the core idea, the thing that connects them, both systems basically say, to get to self-realization, you have to consciously, deliberately face the chaos, even violently.
Okay, so that's what we're hunting for, the how. How does the chaos, the blood and fury you see with Kali, how does that actually embody the structured, fiery path of alchemy? Turning psychological lead, our ego, our baggage, our shadow stuff, into spiritual gold.
If Kali is this ultimate transformer, she has to fit somewhere in those alchemical stages. So let's unpack that path and see where she lands.
Okay, so let's ground ourselves first in the Western side, alchemy. When we talk about it here, we're not talking about guys in labs trying to make actual gold, are we? Though that's where it started, kind of.
Right, we need to make that distinction super clear. We're talking about spiritual alchemy, sometimes called the Hermetic art. It's basically an advanced metaphorical system. It borrows all the language, the processes, the imagery from old school occult chemistry, crucibles, fire, dissolving things.
All that stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff, but uses it as a map, a really complete map for inner transformation, psychological awakening. The goal isn't physical gold anymore, it's inner gold.
Which means?
Well, in esoteric philosophy, that usually means things like God realization or achieving the perfected self, finding your true nature, basically.
Which is a world away from the original alchemists who were trying to transmute lead into gold or find the philosopher's stone, the elixir of life.
Exactly. They were doing actual chemistry, or trying to.
Yeah.
But the spiritual practitioners, they looked at all that bubbling and smoking in the lab and thought, hang on, this isn't really about the chemicals. This is about us. It's about the soul.
They saw the physical processes as symbols.
Universal symbols, yeah. Burning, dissolving, separating, combining. They realized these mirrored the dismantling and rebuilding of our own consciousness. And that inner journey, that's the Magnum Opus, the great work. And it has these really distinct phases marked by colors.
Colors.
Yeah.
Okay, what were the original signposts on this journey?
Originally, yeah, there were four main phases people talked about. First, you had Negredo, that's the black stage. Decomposition, chaos, the beginning.
Okay.
Then albedo, the white stage. Purification, washing, cleaning things up.
White. Makes sense.
Third was citronitis, the yellow stage. This
Yeah.
was seen as a sort of transition, a yellowing as things started moving towards perfection.
Yellow. Like dawn, maybe?
Kind of, yeah. And finally, rubedo, the red stage. That's the end goal, the completion, the solidification of the spiritual gold.
Black, white, yellow, red. Got it.
Yeah.
But didn't that change? Most systems you hear about now focus on just three. What happened to yellow to citronitis?
That's a really interesting bit of history. Sometime around maybe the 15th century, a lot of alchemical systems started merging citronitis into the later stages. They kind of simplified the core journey down to three really potent colors: Negredo, albedo, and rubedo.
Why do that?
Well, the thinking, arguably, was that the yellowing wasn't really a distinct psychological phase on its own. It was more like a sign that the white stage, albedo, was maturing, getting ready to become the red stage, rubedo.
So it was more of a transition within the process.
Exactly. So by focusing on just the three, black, white, red, 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 they really emphasized the core dynamic: death and chaos, Negredo; purification and illumination, albedo; and then resurrection or perfection, rubedo.
Makes punchier, maybe.
Yeah. And importantly, when the Magnum Opus is complete, when you reach that state of spiritual perfection, of wholeness, the color is always red. Red is the symbol of the perfected inner state, the finished gold.
That intense red, that's the goal. Okay, now the sources point to something really key here, something that bridges these traditions. It's about the energy that drives this whole process, the engine behind the great work.
Ah, yes. The driving force. And that force, interestingly, is recognized pretty much globally. It's the Kundalini energy.
Kundalini. But that's Eastern, right?
Hmm.
From yoga, tantra.
Primarily, yes. But what's fascinating is that even in the Western esoteric tradition, the alchemists, the mystics, they were definitely aware of this incredibly potent, transformative, divine power. The same power the East describes as lying dormant, coiled at the base of the spine. They knew you needed this raw energy to kickstart the whole inner transmutation. Without it, nothing happens. The lead just stays led.
So Western alchemists actually had symbols that were kind of like the Hindu idea of Shakti, that primal divine feminine energy.
Absolutely. They needed a way to represent this huge, often chaotic power that really ignites the first stage, the Nigredo, and they use symbols like a serpent.
Which you see everywhere with Kundalini.
Right. It's a universal symbol for life force, cycles, transformation, and they also used a goddess figure. Often she was called Sophia, which means wisdom. So Sophia, in this alchemical context, represents the divine wisdom needed to actually navigate the great work.
And there are images of Sophia that directly link her to this alchemical journey, right? I remember reading about depictions of her with wings.
Yes, wings that contain the three key colors of the Magnum Opus, black, white, and red. It visually connects her to the entire path from the raw start to the perfected finish. And there's often a sword.
Piercing her belly, that sounds violent.
It looks it, but it's symbolic. It's not about her being harmed. That sword represents the purifying, cutting power of the Kundalini energy itself. When that energy wakes up, it's often described as intense, even painful, because it's cutting through illusions. It's initiating the hard, sometimes agonizing work of breaking down the ego.
So Sophia, wisdom embodies the conscious awakening needed to handle that fire.
Exactly. She represents the merging of opposites needed to harness that raw power. So the whole Western system, in its own way, acknowledges that this transformation starts with a kind of chaotic, serpent-like, divine feminine power.
Which brings us right back to Kali. Because if you're looking for the ultimate symbol of that initial fiery, destructive power that chaos needed for the Nigredo stage.
You don't have to look much further, do you? She is that serpent energy made manifest. She's the perfect bridge between these ideas. She embodies that first, most violent, but absolutely necessary stage of transformation. The point where the old self has to shatter so something new can emerge.
Okay, let's really dive deep into Kali then. Because her whole role, especially in Tantra, seems custom-made for this. She practically screams transformation. The sources describe her as the goddess of time, birth, and death. She's the whole cycle: creation, preservation, and especially destruction.
She is dissolution, and that energy defines her. She's seen as the most powerful, the most fearsome aspect of Shakti, the universe's dynamic power, and her name itself, Kali. It's linked to the Vedic word for fire. Not just any fire, but the all-consuming fire.
Annihilation.
Total annihilation, the kind that breaks down matter completely. So right away, that connects her to the alchemical stage of calcination, which is all about purification by intense heat, by fire.
Let's get into her appearance, the iconography. Because it is intense. It's deliberately disturbing, isn't it? And that seems key to comparing her with Nigredo. Why does she look the way she does?
Well, it's designed to shock you, basically. To break your attachments to conventional ideas of beauty, of stability, of worldly things. She's usually depicted with dark blue or black skin.
The color of the void.
Exactly, the color of endless space, of dissolution before creation. She has this long, lolling tongue, often dripping blood, symbolizing how time consumes everything, relentlessly. And then there are the ornaments, a skirt or girdle made of severed human arms, and that famous garland of severed heads or skulls, the mundamala.
The mundamala. The necklace of skulls. What's the symbolism there in terms of psychological transformation?
It's incredibly profound, really. Those skulls represent all the ego's limitations, the false identities we cling to, the attachments, the illusions. By wearing them, Kali's showing that she is the force that devours ignorance and cuts through those fixed ideas about who we are.
So each skull is like a conquered limitation.
Precisely. A victory over a limiting belief, a worldly desire, a part of the false self. It's a constant, maybe terrifying reminder. Everything you think you are has to die before you can be truly free. That's psychological demolition, plain and simple.
Okay, demolition. So how does this raw, terrifying power line up with the alchemical Nigredo, the black stage?
Well, Nigredo in alchemy is defined as chaos, putrefaction, the unknown, things hidden, buried deep. It's also the materia prima, the original, raw, primitive base matter you start with. Kali's blackness, the baby Mahatmya calls it Masavarnam, like ink.
Inky black.
Right. And her whole being as the eternal night of dissolution. It's a perfect mythological mirror for Negredo. She is the blackness of the void, the necessary darkness that has to come before any light or purification.
So she represents facing that void. And the specific process within nigredo you mentioned is calcination. That feels like the crucial link.
Calcination is the absolute first step in the detailed 7-stage alchemical process. It literally means burning. Burning the materia prima down to ash. Purification by fire.
And spiritually. What does that burning mean for us?
Spiritually, it translates to the most intense, sometimes violent breaking free, letting go of worldly attachments, your fixed identity, your status, your deepest neuroses, all the things you cling to. You're essentially burning off all the superfluous parts of yourself, the stuff that's not really you, that doesn't serve your true nature, turning the lead of the ego into sterile ash.
That sounds much more intense than just like self-reflection. It sounds like existential breakdown.
It often is, and Kali, as that all-consuming fire, embodies that refining process perfectly. She transforms you through destruction. She reveals the truth by burning away the lies, the illusions you've built your life on.
You have to face the void, and she kind of forces the issue.
She does, by dismantling your old worldview. The sources explicitly link calcination to the dark night of the soul, that really difficult, often terrifying journey where everything you believed in, everything you identified with, just falls apart and you're left facing emptiness. Kali is the divine force that pushes you into that space, compelling you to see what's real versus what's just conditioning.
And this connects to her most famous image, right? Standing or dancing on Shiva's body.
Ah, yes. Dancing wildly on the prone body of her consort, Shiva, who's often depicted as, well, ithyphallic. That image is perhaps the most potent alchemical metaphor in her entire iconography.
How so? What does it represent?
Well, think about Shiva and Shakti in Hindu philosophy. Shiva represents pure consciousness, Satchitananda. He's the static background, the potential, the witness. He doesn't do anything on his own. Kali, as Shakti, is the dynamic energy. She's movement, manifestation, power.
So she's the action.
She's the action on the potential. By dancing on Shiva, she's showing that consciousness potential, Shiva, just remains dormant, inert, useless, unless the dynamic consuming energy of Shakti, Kali, forces it into action. That dance is the Negredo phase. It is calcination. It's the life force, the awakened kundalini driving the transformation, forcing consciousness out of its comfortable stillness.
He literally kicks things off. Breaks the inertia. And she embodies this paradox, doesn't she? She's terrifying, but also benevolent. The Kalika Purana talks about this. How can the goddess of destruction also be the universal mother?
That's the core paradox of creation itself, isn't it? She is the dark, mysterious, even sexually dominant force, completely opposite to the gentler goddesses like Parvati. The Kalika Purana emphasizes her wildness, her untamed nature, her sexuality, because she represents raw, primal nature, the source of all life, both creation and destruction.
And she's beyond time.
She's beyond time and destiny because she is Kali, the one who has swallowed Kala, time itself. She represents the primordial power that existed even before the main male gods like Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. So to worship her in this context is to align yourself with the necessary destruction of time, illusion, and ego.
But the journey doesn't end in blackness and destruction. There has to be refinement. And Hindu mythology itself shows a way out, right? A transition towards the next alchemical stage, albedo, the white stage of purification.
Yes, exactly. It's a beautiful story, actually, the transformation of Parvati. In the Kalika Purana, Parvati, who's sometimes depicted with dark skin initially, literally strips off her dark kosa, her sheath or covering of darkness, and emerges as the golden-skinned Gauri.
So she sheds the blackness.
She sheds the blackness. It's a perfect mythological representation of the alchemical shift from Negredo to albedo. It shows that the fair goddess and the dark goddess are really just two sides of the same coin, two aspects of the divine feminine. The black stage, the Kali stage, is a necessary veil, a temporary phase you pass through to reach the true golden realization. Once the ego is calcined, burned to ash, the darkness is shed, and the real purification, the whitening, can begin.
Okay, so Kali provides that initial blast furnace, the calcination, the necessary violence and deconstruction. But the rest of the Magnum Opus, the full 7 stages, that outlines the detailed psychological journey after she kicks things off. We should probably walk through these, not just list them, but understand what they feel like psychologically.
Absolutely. This 7-stage model gives you the granular detail. We talked about the 3 big color phases, Negredo, albedo, rubedo, but these 7 steps describe the actual processes happening within those colors. And it's good to remember these aren't always strictly linear. It's often more like a spiral. You might revisit stages until they're fully worked through.
Right, so let's start again at stage 1, calcination. We've put Kali firmly here.
Huh.
Fire, destruction, dark night of the soul.
Psychologically, what's its job?
Its job is the total annihilation of the false self, the ego structure. Chemically, remember, it's burning off superfluous elements. Psychologically, that means confronting your deepest fears, your attachments, your cherished illusions, until they completely lose their power over you.
How did that show up in life?
Often it can manifest as things like depression, a deep existential crisis, feeling like your whole world is collapsing. It's that painful, gut-wrenching realization that everything you built your identity on, your job, your status, your beliefs, is maybe not real, or at least not permanent. It's temporary ash.
Yeah.
And Kali is the perfect, if terrifying, midwife for that process, forcing you to face it, often through crisis.
Okay, so once the fire dies down a bit, stage 2, dissolution. After burning comes washing, water. How does that integrate the damage from Kali's fire? Yeah, dissolution is a really crucial follow-up. It's about taking those ashes, the remnants of your old self, the stuff calcination broke down, and dissolving them in water. And water here symbolizes the unconscious mind, your emotions, your deep feelings.
This is emotional processing.
Deep emotional processing. Spiritually, this is where you really start freeing yourself from that inauthentic identity by facing the repressed parts of yourself, all the stuff you've pushed down. It's often a very cathartic stage. You might have huge releases of old emotions, past hurts, deep trauma that the fire of calcination basically unearthed.
So calcination is confrontation, dissolution is integration through feeling.
Exactly. If calcination was fire, dissolution is the flood. The element is water. And interestingly, this stage often gets linked to Archangel Gabriel and the Judgment card in Tarot, that idea of emotional reckoning and washing clean.
Makes sense. Okay, stage 3, separation. After all that fire and flood, this sounds like getting some clarity. The element here is air.
Yes, separation is associated with air. Think mental clarity, discernment, sifting through things. The goal here is to extract the pure essence from that emotional soup created during dissolution.
What does that mean practically?
Spiritually, it means learning to separate yourself from your habitual thought patterns, your knee-jerk emotional reactions. You start to achieve a kind of inner liberation, a stillness, by stepping back and just observing your mind and emotions rather than being swept away by them.
Becoming the witness.
Becoming the witness, exactly. You start to distinguish between your true awareness and the character you've been playing, that ego-driven, reactive self. It's a moment of conscious choice, of seeing things clearly. It's often a welcome mental break after the intensity of the first 2 stages.
Okay, moving on. Stage 4, conjunction. This sounds like putting things back together. Maybe the first real step towards building the new self.
It is. Conjunction is a major turning point. It's the great recombination. You take the purified elements, you've now isolated the essence from fire, water, air, and you intentionally combine them under the stabilizing influence of the earth element.
Grounding it.
Grounding it, embodying it. The spirit, having gone through purification, starts to become more solid, more integrated into your being, into your life. This is where the big alchemical polarities really start to come together and harmonize. Male and female energies, body and soul, intellect and intuition. You get this first real taste of inner harmony, of wholeness. The work isn't done, but you feel integrated, authentic.
That sounds positive. But then stage 5, putrefaction fermentation. Putrefaction means rotting. That sounds like a step backwards after conjunction. Why decay now?
Yeah, the name is grim, isn't it? And this can be one of the toughest stages, definitely the messiest. Putrefaction is about the decay of the last remnants of the old self, the bits that maybe survived calcination or reformed. And it's also about the forced rebirth of the true self. Think of the phoenix rising from the ashes. That's the fermentation part.
So it's 2 steps, decay, then rebirth.
Right. First, the putrefaction, the rotting away. This can be hard because you might fear losing the new sense of self you found in conjunction. It can bring back despair, depression. It's like a final confrontation with ego death. But then if you allow that decay, it's followed by fermentation or spiritualization. The old self is truly let go, and it's replaced by this blissful inner peace, seeing the world in a new, luminous way, like spiritual intoxication arising from the decay of the old.
Wow. Okay, so after that, stage 6, distillation. We're back to purification, but this sounds different, more refined.
Much more refined. Distillation is about purification through boiling and condensation. Think of distilling spirits. You boil off the liquid, then condense the pure vapor, leaving impurities behind. Spiritually, it's about removing the very last subtle impurities to liberate the pure essence of your spirit from any remaining attachment to matter or ego.
So this is really finalizing the true self.
It's the actualization of your spirit, the final integration of any remaining shadow aspects. Your conscious and unconscious minds come into complete, stable harmony. Your core identity is freed from all inferior elements, all conditioning. The voice of your soul, your higher self, becomes the dominant force. You become purely, authentically yourself.
And that leads to the grand finale. Stage 7, coagulation. Making it permanent, solidifying the goal.
Exactly. Coagulation is the final stage of solidification. It's when that distilled essence, your true self, becomes whole, stable, independent, and complete. It's like molten gold finally cooling and hardening into its final, perfect, unchanging form.
The philosopher's stone, metaphorically.
The inner philosopher's stone. It represents the complete unification of all opposites, spirit and matter, masculine and feminine, into a single, cohesive, perfected whole. The raw, chaotic energy that Kali unleashed back in calcination has now been fully processed, refined, and solidified into the ultimate spiritual substance, the red elixir. It shows that the whole journey, from fire and chaos through water and air, through decay and refinement, is necessary to reach that final, stable state.
Okay, so Kali aligns powerfully with Negrito and calcination. That seems clear. But she's not just a starting pistol, is she? Her role seems much more complex, especially when you look at tantric alchemy, specifically the Vammakara tradition. She's central there.
Oh, absolutely central. To really grasp Kali's full transformative power, you have to look at the Vammakara path, the so-called left-hand path in Tantra. This path is fascinating because it's deliberately, well, it goes against the grain. It's often seen as antithetical to mainstream Vedic norms of purity, asceticism, denial.
So there's different kind of alchemy.
It is an alchemical philosophy in itself. Instead of trying to transcend the world by denying the physical, denying sensation, denying the shadow parts of ourselves, Vammakara uses those very things as the tools, as the fuel for liberation.
So if the right-hand path, Dakshinachara, is about purity, maybe aligning with albedo,
Yeah.
the left-hand path embraces the forbidden, because that's where the most intense energy is.
Precisely. The right-hand path seeks transcendence often by avoiding certain worldly experiences, focusing on rituals of purification. The left-hand path, Vammakara, seeks transcendence through embracing intense experience, through integrating the shadow. It dives right into the Negrito and calcination energies. Kali demands you engage with the forbidden because, from this perspective, true integration requires confronting the primal forces that conventional society wants you to suppress or ignore.
And the way they worship reflects this directly, right? Using the controversial 5 M's.
Yes, the Panchamakara, Madhya wine, Matsya, fish, Mamsa meat, Mudra, parched grains, sometimes symbolic gestures, and the one that gets the most attention and is most relevant here, Maithuna, ritual sexual intercourse.
And the Kalika Purana really focuses on Maithuna, seeing conscious sexual union as incredibly powerful.
It sees it as mirroring the origin of all creation. In this context, the ritual union isn't just about pleasure, it's viewed as the ultimate alchemical experiment performed within the body. It represents the merging of Shiva, the static Kantis principle, often identified with the male practitioner, and Shakti Kundalini, the dynamic energetic principle, the inner woman, embodied by the female partner.
So it's calcination in conjunction happening physically.
That's the idea, to generate intense spiritual energy through that union. And it's not passive. The texts sometimes emphasize the role of the dominant female partner, prolonging the union. What's the spiritual goal of that?
What's the mechanic there?
The ultimate aim, according to the sources, is to awaken the dormant Kundalini Shakti. The intense energy generated through this conscious, controlled, powerful act is deliberately channeled upwards through the central channel, the Sushumna Nadi, towards the crown chakra, the Sahasrara.
Moving the energy up the spine.
Exactly. And by doing this, the practitioner aims to transition from a state of being caught up in intense worldly activity and desire called pravritti to a state of liberation, the cessation of desire, known as nivritti. It's transcendence through the experience, not by avoiding it, pushing the physical and psychological boundaries until they break, essentially moving from Kali's intense fire towards ultimate peaceful realization.
It's a very intense path. But this focus on Kali's overwhelming untamed energy,
Right.
the Vammakara path,
Yeah.
it needs balance, doesn't it? You can't just live in that fire constantly, which maybe brings in someone like Sita.
Sita is the perfect counterpoint. She embodies the other end of the divine feminine spectrum in popular Hinduism. She's the ideal wife, the good mother archetype, the devoted partner of Rama. As a manifestation of Lakshmi, she represents goodness, devotion, stability, nurturance.
Complete opposite of Kali's wild energy.
A stark contrast, yes. Sita represents the qualities of purity, steadfastness, gentle strength qualities that are also essential, particularly for the later, more stable stages of the alchemical process like albedo, purification, and maybe even coagulation stability.
So you need both, the wild and the gentle.
That's the implication for wholeness, isn't it? The alchemical path seems to require navigating this tension. You need the controlled, purifying devotional path, represented perhaps by Sita or Gauri, albedo, and you need the chaotic, shadow-integrating, confrontational path of Kali, Nigreta calcination. To get to the goal, you have to integrate both the gentle and the terrifying within yourself. If you deny the terrifying, you deny the very engine of transformation.
Okay, and if Kali represents that initial focus blast of Degredo fire, what about the Mahavidyas, that group of 10 goddesses? They suggest the transformation is even broader. Right?
Definitely. The Mahavidyas, the great wisdoms, are a group of 10 tantric goddesses, and they're often seen as direct manifestations or aspects of Kali herself. She leads the group. Each Mahavidya represents a distinct principle of existence, a unique facet of reality, and therefore a specific path or insight needed for self-realization.
So it's not just one big transformation, but maybe 10 key insights or shifts.
Exactly. Besides Kali, you have goddesses like Tara, who guides you across troubled waters, Tripura Sundari, representing absolute beauty and bliss, Bhairavi, the fierce warrior aspect, and maybe the most visually shocking, Chinnamasta.
Chinnamasta, the goddess who cuts off her own head. That imagery is incredibly powerful. What does self-decapitation signify in this kind of alchemical transformational context?
Chinnamasta is depicted holding her own severed head, while streams of blood spurt from her neck, one stream feeding her own mouth, the others feeding her attendants. Psychologically, it's the ultimate symbol of sacrifice and surrender. Cutting off the head represents the complete severing of the ego, the limiting individual mind.
But she feeds herself with her own blood.
Yes. That symbolizes the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth. It suggests that true sustenance, true life force, comes from this radical act of self-surrender, of transcending the limited ego. It's a profound spiritual metaphor for completely shedding the false self in order to nourish the true self and the world around you.
It's basically the ultimate lesson in calcination and putrefaction. The death of the limited self is necessary for the life of the true spirit.
Absolutely. And the fact that the Mahavidyas exist as this group of 10 distinct, powerful, often terrifying forms, it underlines that the Magnum Opus, the great spiritual transformation, isn't just one simple step. It's a comprehensive journey. It involves navigating multiple intense psychological and spiritual shifts, confronting these 10 fundamental principles of reality to achieve true wholeness. It's a complex, multifaceted overhaul of the self.
Okay, so we've established this strong link between Kali, Nigredo, and the start of transformation. To really drive home that this might be a universal pattern, we can look at the Western tradition again, but outside of pure alchemy. Specifically the archangels, as they appear in the major arcana of the tarot. These figures seem to create a narrative that really echoes the alchemical journey we've been talking about.
They absolutely do. These archangels pop up in key major arcana cards, and they function almost like cosmic guides or allies. They help the soul navigate through stages of balancing, temptation, choice, and awakening. It really shows that this idea of staged spiritual growth, which crucially involves confronting darkness, is woven throughout Western esoteric thought, not just in alchemy texts.
Let's look at them. First up, Michael. He appears in the Temperance card, card 14.
Michael is usually known as the warrior archangel, the protector. But in Temperance, he's playing the role of the master alchemist. Look at the imagery. He's standing perfectly balanced, 1 foot on land, representing the material world, 1 foot in water, the emotional unconscious realm.
And he's pouring liquid between 2 cups.
Exactly, pouring liquid between 2 chalices perfectly without spilling a drop. That's a classic textbook image of blending opposites, finding the middle path, achieving alchemical balance and integration. His job in this card is literally spiritual alchemy, helping you transmute emotional turmoil, inner conflict, spiritual instability into calm, centeredness, harmony. His element is often associated with fire, but here it's a controlled, focused, integrating fire.
Okay, balance and integration with Michael. Then we have Raphael and the Lovers, card 6.
Raphael is the archangel of healing, and he's strongly associated with love, relationships, and important choices, especially those involving divine connection or soul alignment. In the Lover's card, he's often shown presiding over the figures below, suggesting he elevates their connection from just physical attraction to something more spiritual.
So his role is guidance.
Guidance in making choices that align with your heart, your higher self, your true path, rather than just your ego or fleeting desires. He represents the unification of opposites on an emotional and relational level. His element is air, signifying the mental clarity needed to make those crucial soul-aligned choices.
All right, so balance, then choice. Now we get to the really interesting parallel with Kali and Negredo. Uriel in the Devil card, card XV, that seems wrong. An Archangel in the Devil card.
It seems paradoxical, absolutely, and that's the key. The traditional view of the Devil card is all about bondage, materialism, addiction, negative forces. But in deeper occult traditions, the spiritual intelligence behind that archetype, the force you actually need to deal with, is often identified as Archangel Uriel. Uriel is the angel of wisdom, illumination, prophecy. He's associated with the earth, with hidden knowledge, and with the refining fires of transformation.
So he's deliberately placed in the darkest card.
Precisely because his light, his illumination, is needed most in the darkness of illusion and attachment. He's not the tempter figure depicted on the card. He's the one who reveals the nature of the chains.
So Uriel doesn't represent the evil. He represents the truth about the self-imposed bondage, the truth needed for calcination.
Exactly. He forces you to confront the illusions, the attachments, the addictions, the limiting beliefs, the chains that are holding you back. He shows you that the chains are often loose, that you have the power to break free. He's the light in the cave. He represents that painful, necessary truth-telling that forces you to confront your shadow self. His presence in the Devil card is a demand. Look at your prison. See how you built it. Now find the key. He transforms through revelation, through truth. This confrontation is the psychological equivalent of calcination.
And didn't the sources say Uriel is known as the giver of alchemical knowledge?
Yes, that connection is explicit in some esoteric texts, and his element is earth. Which makes sense here. He grounds you in the reality of your self-created limitations.
Wow. Okay, so Kali is the mythological fire of destruction, and Uriel is the angelic illumination, forcing the same necessary confrontation with the shadow. That really ties it together. And finally, Gabriel in Judgment, card XX.
Gabriel, the divine messenger, the awakener. In Judgment, his trumpet is sounding, calling the figures often depicted rising from tombs to awaken. It's a call to rise from spiritual sleep, to shed the old self and step into a higher destiny, a renewed purpose.
So this is rebirth, the later stages.
It symbolizes the final stages like distillation and coagulation. It's about rebirth, yes, but also resolution, integration, and aligning with your true calling. It's a moment of synthesis, where the purified self understands its journey and embraces its ultimate purpose. Gabriel's element is water, signifying that final emotional cleansing, the flow of spirit needed for awakening.
So looking at the four of them together, Michael brings balance, like conjunction maybe. Raphael guides healing choices, like separation. Uriel forces the confrontation with darkness, like calcination. And Gabriel calls forth the final awakening and purpose, rudocoagulation. It really maps the whole alchemical journey.
It's a complete spiritual arc mirrored in these angelic guides. It shows the evolution of the soul moving through all the elements, all the phases, and always requiring that crucial, often difficult reckoning with the darkness, the shadow, the chains, and, this relentless quest for divine knowledge, for understanding transformation. We see it historically, too. Look at someone like John Dee.
Queen Elizabeth I, court astrologer and mathematician. He wasn't just predicting futures, was he? He was deep into this stuff.
Deeply. He wasn't just after physical gold or political power. His work was really natural philosophy, trying to understand the fundamental structure of reality, God's creation. He became obsessed with getting divine knowledge that he felt humans couldn't access normally. So he turned to trying to contact angels.
Believing they held the keys?
Believing they held the keys to the universe, basically. He worked with a scryer, Edward Kelly, using tools like a show stone, an obsidian mirror, or a crystal ball, and this incredibly complex ritual setup involving the Holy Table and the Enochian alphabet, which he claimed the angels taught him.
What was he hoping to get?
He was searching for the Liber Logoth, the book of the speech of God. He believed this book contained the original language of creation, the divine blueprint. Understanding it would be the ultimate gnosis, the ultimate spiritual gold. It was about comprehending reality at its source.
And which angel was supposedly central to these communications? Who gave them this knowledge?
Archangel Uriel. According to Dee's diaries, Uriel was one of the primary angelic contacts, maybe even the first one Kelly successfully scryed. Uriel was reportedly key in revealing parts of the Enochian system and the Liber Loga.
Real again.
Uriel again. The angel of illumination, associated with prophecy, mystery, hidden knowledge, and the one we just linked to confronting darkness in the devil card. It ties him directly back to this idea that accessing profound, transformative truth often involves engaging with the hidden, the difficult, the potentially dangerous. Uriel, the light bringer in the dark, the giver of alchemical knowledge, seems to be the gatekeeper for that kind of deep, uncomfortable, world-changing truth.
So whether we're talking alchemy labs, Kali's cremation grounds, tarot cards, or John Dee's scrying sessions, the underlying pattern seems consistent. Transformation requires initiation, often through fire or darkness. It needs confrontation with the shadow, the hidden parts, the realm of Kali, the realm of Nigredo, the realm illuminated by Uriel. It seems essential. Hashtag tag outro.
So when you pull it all together, what we've really seen today is that this alchemical journey, it seems to be a kind of universal blueprint, doesn't it? A deep structure for how profound spiritual transformation happens. Whether you frame it using the 7 stages, calcination to coagulation, or through the raw, untamed power of the divine feminine like Kali and her Mahavidyas, the core message echoes across these different systems.
Yeah, the path to wholeness, to finishing that magnum opus, it really seems to demand that you willingly step into the chaos. You face the darkness, the nigredo. You let the old identity get burned away by that intense fire, the calcination. Kali isn't just a symbol of that destruction. She almost is the destructive force itself, the necessary catalyst.
She's the engine of that initial phase. She breaks down the ego so the spirit has room to be refined. She's not the enemy of the process. She is a crucial part of the mechanism.
And that ultimate prize, the inner gold, you only get there by integrating these powerful opposites, right? The terrifying power of Kali and the beautiful potential of Gauri or Sita. The shadow and the light, the material and the spiritual. If you try to skip the dark part, the fire, you basically reject the energy you need to even start the engine. You can't get left off without the fire.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe something for you, the listener, to mull over. If this spiritual path really does require descending into the darkness of calcination, into the nigredo, before you can find the true light, what shadow self, what chain symbolized by Archangel Uriel holding the light in the devil card might you be avoiding looking at right now? What needs to be faced head-on to reclaim your own true, solid, integrated power?
Yeah, think about what binds you. Is it an illusion? An attachment, a belief that's just, calcified, hardened over time. Yeah. The angel of elimination, Uriel, and the fire of Kali, they're kind of waiting for you to see those chains clearly so you can make the conscious choice to burn them off and step free. Definitely something to think about. That's our deep dive for today. We'll see you next time.